Mike Zeck's journey to comic book stardom is legendary. From the explosive covers on G.I. Joe to redefining the Punisher in Circle of Blood and delivering iconic moments in Captain America, Zeck's work has shaped the comics we love. Let's not forget the debut of Spider-Man's black costume or Kraven's Last Hunt, one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever told. Today, we're diving into the career of the man behind the unforgettable creations with epic covers, legendary stories, and yes, jazz hands that made Spider-Man leap off the page. This is the legacy of Mike Zeck. This week, we got to focus on Mike Zeck. Shane, we talked a little bit about his career and some of the things he's done. Tell me your memories of Mike Zeck books.
As I usually do once I find out, I go into my CLZ and I bring it up and I check to see, you can sort it by artist and cover artist. There's a little link in it that you can do that. And I have, I think, 35 books. So not as many as I thought. But to me, that just signifies how meaningful each one or his art was, because there's so few covers, but everybody knows his name. So for me, the big one was Secret Wars and Craven. Those were my two big books because I collected Amazing Spider-Man, and then seeing and not really knowing about artists at that point, but because it was consistent across the issues pretty much of that Kraven Last Hunt, just being like, I loved it. I just flipped through it again and just was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this story.
I will agree with you when it comes to Mike Zeck. I think he's one of those artists that he was never put in like the top artist of the year. He was never done that because there was always others that overshadowed him during his time, like John Byrne or George Perez, Arthur Adams, to name a few. But what was great about him was his consistency, and he had some amazing covers. His work on Punisher, Shang-Chi, his covers on G.I. Joe, all of them, a beautiful portfolio of art to see there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the life of Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck shown artistic talent early, studying at Wrigley School of Art before becoming a legendary artist for Marvel and DC. His iconic Craven's Last Hunt with J.M. DeMatteis and Bob McLeod is regarded as a definitive Kraven the Hunter story and one of Spider-Man's greatest tales. If there's an echelon of what's the best Spider-Man stories, Kraven's Last Hunt is definitely on top of it, of that list.
It's way up there.
Right. Zeck helped define the Punisher with Circle of Blood, created with Steve Grant and John Beatty, and designed Spider-Man's black costume in Secret Wars, leading to Venom's creation. His striking visuals, including collaborations with Phil Zimmelman, remain iconic in comic history. Zeck's work has graced Captain America, Batman, G.I. Joe, among others. His influence endures through collected editions and merchandise, inspiring fans and artists worldwide. To find more of Mike Zeck's art and body of work, visit www.mikezeck.com. He also has a Facebook page at Michael J. Zeck. Let's go ahead and start with the very beginning. That is The Savage Sword of Conan, #2. This came out in 1974 from Marvel Comics. It has a fair market value of $24, very good, $82 at 9.4. This book last sold for $79 at 8.4, and this is his first published interior art.
Wow, that's awesome.
Not expensive.
No.
We're going back to these books that are not expensive.
Yeah, like when I searched up in CLZ, my earliest one is 76, and it's Many Ghosts of Dr. Graves, and that's a $3 book.
That's actually a book we're going to get to in a minute.
Oh, okay, great.
But this one, what's different about this one as opposed to the other ones is that it's not your traditional comic book. So
Right.
it's his first published interior arc is for the magazine size Conan the Barbarian. Well, really Savage Sword of Conan. There was Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword. This is kind of where his career started. It started with these books that no one really heard of, but Conan was popular enough that he managed to get in there as well. So 1974, man.
Yeah.
That's when he started.
Amazing.
Our next book here, I mentioned this book last week when I was doing some research with a couple of friends of mine. Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch #2. 1975 for Charlton Comics. $5. No known slabs. And the last time it sold, it actually sold in November for $27, and it's his first standard comic. So this is
I think
a
he has
first
an argument
actual comic.
to predate the Cars guys. I think he could probably get some royalties for that. That's what it reminds me of.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it's quite possible. It is a Hanna-Barbera project, so this is a licensed project. So I don't know what he would. But seriously, this is his first comic book, his actual regular comic book,
Oh, I
and
love
it's
these.
$5.
Yeah, great, amazing.
This is part of the reason why I love doing this show, is to be able to see comics that have some historic value, but yet nominal value they don't really have. So
Yeah.
I wish they would grow in nominal value. More
Again,
people will go at it.
I've said it before. This is an area of the comic market that not a lot of people really tend towards yet. With artists' first book, first cover, first interiors, first run on books, stuff like that. Which I love doing that.
Mm-hmm. This is the one you were talking about, which is The Many Ghosts of Dr. Graves, issue 56, another Charlton book that came out in 1976. You said it, $3.
Yeah.
It's
the one I
first cover.
Yeah, the one I have is 59. So we just did the interior of that one, but this is a way better pick for sure. I'd love to find this one.
Yeah. Well, if you find it, $3.
$3.
How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah. These are the type of books that it's more fun in the search than the value. That's where it's the thrill of the hunt type of thing.
And I'm sure when you go to cons, I would say like Heroes Con's probably a good example. Someone knows about this book, but many people don't. And therefore, it keeps the price of that book low. When it's not in demand, the price goes down. When it's in demand, the price goes up. When people start recognizing, hey, that's a Mike Zeck, it's worth having just to say you have it. No recorded slabs for this book.
Yeah.
So if you find this book and you slab it, it's, hey, you have a Mike Zeck. Yeah,
you're making a good argument for me here, Izzy. Like, I really want to try to do that now.
You have to go back to all the videos now.
I got to start making notes.
Let's go to our next book in this list, and that's Masters of Kung Fu 55. This is 1977. Now we're starting to get Mike Zeck in superhero comics. But it's funny because he's in a Kung Fu comic, not a superhero comic. So there's a technicality there. Another book, very below the radar as far as price goes. Fair market value of this book is at $6 fine. $46 for 9.8. So there are slabs of this book. $46 for 9.8. Take my money.
I know.
Just take it.
When you can get it below what it's going to cost you to do it yourself, and it's already graded, it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, it is his first Master of Kung Fu interior art, so that's not his cover. It's a Mike Zeck. That's it. That's all I need to know. It's a Mike Zeck book. He stays on Masters of Kung Fu for quite some time during this time period. Our next book in our list is Marvel Super Action #7. This came out in 1978. $5, no slabs, and it last sold in December, not that long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. First Captain America cover art. This is a reprint of an older Captain America issue, but the cover is a Mike Zeck.
I mean, again, when you search for stuff like this, like if you're a fan of his art, then this is a book that you definitely want to pick up. And for $5, I mean, how can you go wrong?
It's a cool cover too. I
Yeah.
love it. It's a great cover with Captain America. Captain America 224. This came out in 1978. Fair market value of this book is $6. 9.8 is going for $69. And again, back in 12/17/24, it sold for $6. And this is the first official Captain America comic by Mike Zeck.
Yeah, another great looking cover. It's a pose you don't usually see. He's
A defeated
really
Captain America, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a great one. Here's another one that's, I want to call it iconic, and that's Masters of Kung Fu issue number 86. This came out in 1980. This is where we're starting to see Mike Zeck become the Mike Zeck we know and love.
Yeah.
$5 for this book. A 9.4 goes for $50, and that's the fair market value. The last recorded sale of this book was $6 back in December 15th of this year. Iconic cover.
Yeah.
You know, and then you see Zeck's little signature right there underneath.
Starting to pop in there. Yep.
Yeah, it just stands out right there. I just love it. Look at the way he has the fingers, he is an artist.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes Mike Zeck so great, is that he is a true artist. Not to say that he's fantastical. It's as simple as it could get, but as powerful as it could get, if that means
memorable.
anything.
Yeah.
Marvel Treasury edition number 27. This came out also in 1980. It's only $28 at a fine, fair market value. And last recorded sale of this book was $21. That also happened not that long ago. Why is it important? It's a Spider-Man Hulk team up. And it's cover art by Mike Zeck. So Mike Zeck is one of those guys to me that he's one of the original cover artists from back then. Even though cover artist was still a thing at the time, he was one of those guys that was starting to get more and more work because of the way he draws.
Yeah, and I have to start picking up I always look for these Treasury editions when I'm out and about, because they're books that I remember seeing when I was a kid, because it was oversized and it was amazing.
Oversized, yeah. Mm-hmm. Another Hulk and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Okay. His first DC work was not what people expected, and that is the unexpected 221. Came out in 1982 for DC Comics. This book has a fair market value of only $10, and it sold back in October for $11. And it's his first DC recorded work.
Yeah, and I mean, you get a great, looks like a Joe Kubert cover on it too.
Yeah, it's definitely a Joe Kubert cover.
And and you get first DC interiors. And again, you find this book for $11. It's like, if we could sell all these books right now, I would just buy them all. Like every book we're talking about.
And you still have money in your wallet.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at our next book in this list. I couldn't help myself when I saw this one. I had to throw it up, and that's Captain America 272 back in 1982. Another iconic cover. $6 fine, $72 at a 9.6. This sold for $5 not that long ago. It's the first appearance of Vermin. Vermin is a character that has some significant ties to Mike Zeck in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, look at the composition of this cover. It's just amazing.
He likes to draw a defeated Captain America, I've noticed.
Yes, that seems to be a trend for sure.
Great cover by Mike Zeck. Let's go to our next book here. We talked about No Man before. Now we're going to talk about him here with Captain America 282. This came out in 1983 for Marvel. Fair market value is $9 fined, $95 at a 9.8. This book sold for $7. just a couple of days ago, and it's the first appearance of Jack Monroe's Nomad, a character who he was pretty popular in the '90s for a little while and this is his first appearance.
Didn't pick up a lot of Captain America back in the day, so it's always fun seeing these covers because it's just something new that I haven't really seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who knows? This may potentially be a spec book someday. It was at one time, but now with all the talk of Nomad, who knows? We may see Nomad sometime in the future. He's one of those characters that I could eventually see show up in the MCU project one day. So if you find this for $10, I'm just saying, just hold it.
My money.
Here's another classic cover, Captain America 286. Back in 1983, this book came out, $6 at a fine. However, this book is so popular that a 9.8 sells for $200. That is a crazy comparison. Like, it is so off balance.
Start looking for this book. That's what you need to do. And then send it. Like, look at the difference in the price. You find this in the $2 or $3 bin and give it a once over. And if you think it could make it, that's a pretty large payback.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the cover, right? It's Deathstroke, and he's targeting Captain America. This is so iconic. So if you find a book that's near mid, which might be hard for a book from 1983, that might be challenging. That's why $200 at 9.8 isn't that far-fetched in that way. But still, if you find a raw copy of this book at a really good condition, you're talking about a book that's well worth it in value.
Would you call this a kind of light homage to ASM 129? That's kind of the vibe I get from it.
I see that. I definitely see that. I also think this is one of those types of images that you see quite frequently. So to find out who really starts it off is hard. Even though, the ASM cover is a little different because you get full body Punisher as opposed to this one. And it does have that same concept. But either way, it's still a great cover.
Amazing.
Okay, let's go to our next book here. Here's one that people are not familiar with, but this is one that's extremely expensive. Heroes Hotline magazine it's a fanzine that came out back in 1983. This is, I guess you could equate this to like Wizard magazine, things like that, where they do interviews with artists and writers. And this one features a preview of the black costume Spider-Man that predates ASM 252. This book is currently going for about $700. And in fact, a $700 book sold December 18th of this year.
Could be the most expensive Man-Thing cover.
And it has nothing to do with men. It was one that when I was doing my research, I said, oh, so this is the first black costume cover. Well, not cover, book. Now, of course, the $700 is pretty up there in price for interior work. So if you were to get this book slabbed, I'm one of those guys that the cover has to matter to me.
Yeah.
To know what's going on inside is kind of hard. It's kind of rough, but if you want to do it, it's your book, it's your money. You do what you want. I wouldn't slab it because I want to be able to open it up and say, look at the page right there.
Yeah, my thinking is I agree, but if you can get a reproduction of this book, like a facsimile, and you can have that to look at, then for me it's about preserving the book in the best condition you can, like beyond being in Mylar and a nice board, something like that. And that would be kind of the only reason for me personally to slab a book like this.
And this was the book that kind of started the rumors about Spider-Man. If you remember from 252, when it says the rumors are true, this is the book that kicked it off. Yeah. And during that time, if the internet was the thing, I'm curious what social media will be saying about it.
Yeah, it's always interesting to look at current things or past things under the lens of if that type of thing was around.
Here's another book that I had to put in there, and that's G.I. Joe Real American Hero, issue number 24. This came out in 1984. This book goes for about $24, and the 9.8 of this book is $540. The last recorded sale of this book was $22, and that was on the 13th of December. The key significant, this is Mike Zeck's first cover doing G.I. Joe. He would then do multiple G.I. Joe covers afterwards. It's also the first appearance of Zartan, Firefly, and Wild Weasel.
There we go. You can count that as a rat.
Mike Zeck is notorious for G.I. Joe covers. All right. We're not going to highlight all the G.I. Joe covers. I think we might do one or two more. But since this one started it, I figured it made sense to put this one up as opposed to the other ones. Everybody,
another great starting point. I mean, I never really got into G.I. Joe, but looking at this type of thing, when you can see the difference between just a raw and then a graded, it's one of those ones, if you've got it in your collection, you know, take a look at it. Or if you have multiple copies, you know, it's a good one to get graded if you have that.
I agree. This is one that the cover is different from the interiors on that. Now we're going to the big books. Marvel Superhero Secret Wars #1. This came out back in 1984. Fair market value of this book is $34. Very fine. $209 at a 9.8. Last recorded sale of this book happened on just a couple of days, actually, in our December 22nd. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
It was $85 at 9.2. This features the first cameo appearance of the Beyonder in the White Light and Voice. What's more important is it was the first line-wide crossover event series. What some people don't know about Marvel Superhero Secret Wars is that the story in itself, it's not the greatest story you've ever read. Right? It's fine. It's not awesome, I'll say. What's important to note about this was that it was part of a toy line that Marvel was able to acquire. They were able to license their characters. And so a lot of these characters ended up being part of toys. And it was the first time we get to see most of these characters as a toy. So the comic book is kind of like an association of the toy line. You know, it's kind of an adaptation of what the toy line should be. But it was in storyline. It was one of those stories that it started with Secret Wars and it ended at Secret Wars. And that's Secret Wars.
I have a different type of take on it because I was buying this when it came out, and at the time, like I did reread it probably about 10 years ago, but I'd have to reread it again now. But I just remember my little comic brain being blown away that all these heroes were together, because I only really read Spider-Man. I knew about the other characters because in the Marvel, like, they would talk about them, but to see them all and interact, and then Spider-Man, he goes against the X-Men in this and all of that. And it was just amazing to me. So I really enjoyed it at the time. And I did enjoy it in the reread. So I'd have to read it again to kind of see how the story holds up. But I do remember loving it.
Well, this was our end game, pretty much. This was our end game. And because before movies and TV, we didn't really get crossovers. Crossovers didn't really happen. And when you had a crossover event, it meant something. This was one of those books that when you saw it, you said, everybody's in this book.
If you're reading, if you read ASM when this is happening, like at the end of one issue, he's in the park and he disappears. And you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, especially because there's no social media or anything at this point. It's like, what? He's gone? Where did he go?
Yeah. And then he obviously went to Battle Worlds and all that fun stuff that came along with that. So it is a fun story. I would go back and read it again. I'm pretty sure I'll read it again. But let's talk about the big money book. That's Marvel Superhero Secret Wars #8, 1984. Fair market value of this book is $171 at a very fine. 9.8 could go anywhere between $500 and $12. Last recorded sale was $239. Iconic cover, black costumes, origin of the symbiote. and most importantly, jazz hands.
Yeah. This book is so, I love this book. Again, I just bought all of the facsimiles. I'm only missing the first couple. And this, just, every time I see this cover now, it makes me laugh because I have the Canadian price variant of almost every issue. There's only a couple that I don't.
Mhm.
And this one somehow has giant bite marks right below, like right
Really?
in the middle of the spine, and I don't know how they got there, but I got to work on getting them out so I can send this book in to be graded. It just makes me laugh.
This is one of those books. I was able to pick up a copy of this book in Heroes Con. I immediately got it signed and then slabbed. And it is such a good cover.
Yeah,
Have fun with the whole jazz hands of it all, but just look at the battle behind, and then he's there like, what just happened? Why do I have this costume? Like, you clearly could tell he's like confused that he has a costume on.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of what makes this book so great. This is not the first appearance of the black costume, but seems to be the most sought after one out of the
yeah.
books.
And I wonder if at the time when they're doing these books, if they had an idea that it was going to hit as well as it did.
Well, as memory serves me right, I heard a little bit of the story of the costume when they were talking about the costume. The costume was not supposed to last for a long period of time. When the word got out that he was changing his costume, everybody's like, how dare you change an iconic costume, a perfect costume? And you know what I'm saying? Because most people considered Spider-Man's original costume as a perfect costume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, agreed on that one.
Right? So when that came across and the word got out, people were upset, people were angry, they were writing letters, all that was happening. Editorial said, we got to get him back to the right costume. The minute the costume got out and people saw the costume, letters started coming in. We love the costume. We think it's awesome. It's beautiful. It's great. It immediately changed, and then editorial went back and said, we got to bring the costume back. So he stood with the costume for about 3 years.
Yeah, and the thing that is great that happened in ASM at that time and across the Spider books that doesn't happen as much now, I would say, is there was a mystery to it. You read every issue because it's like, what is it? Where is it from? Like, what's it doing? And then they had the Fantastic Four. He went to read, and they were testing it, and Dr. Connors. Like, there was a story within the story of it, which, again, my little comic brain, like, I loved that.
And then it eventually became Venom.
Right.
So the costume got to live on.
Yeah, amazing. Just an amazing.
Great storytelling too. Great use of storytelling, I would say, for this what is a costume. Now Spider-Man has 1,001 million other costumes coming out now, so it doesn't have that same kind of excitement as this one does.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we see a new costume. It's a great looking costume. What I love about it is that it still tells me it's Spider-Man. I immediately know it's still Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Even though we got rid of the red, we got rid of the blue, we kept the eyes, right? The way the eyes are formed, and then we made the spider emblem take up his whole chest, which it's perfect to me.
And it was so well used in the books by the artists as well, just like him in the shadows, and you would just see the spider crest. Like, it was really well done.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Another iconic cover. Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 10. This book, just 2 months later, sells for $26. Very fine. $229 for 9.8. 9.2 sold for $61. This is what we call iconic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I purchased this book twice over the last 2 years. And both purchases are like $10 that I purchased because I love this cover that much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just flip through this whole series, the covers, they're for the most part really well done. But again, this one is one that stands out from reading it. when it came off the stands, not knowing a lot about Doctor Doom, it's just like, yeah, I want to read this. I need to know what's happening inside this book.
Yeah, he looks defeated, but he's not done. He's not finished. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, if like, what did that to him type of thing is I remember thinking like, wow, okay, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Since they mentioned Robert Downey Jr. playing the role of Doctor Doom, people have been hunting down classic Doctor Doom books and covers, and just happens to be one of them, especially with the word Secret Wars attached to it, where you have Secret Wars, Doctor Doom. He's going to be the main villain in the Secret Wars storyline. This is the book that people want to see the two together.
Yeah, and watch out again for that Canadian price variant, because it's a lot lower print run. And, if you are seeking those Doom covers, it's a good one to have.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at our next book. Is The Punisher. This is the limited series title, number 1, 1986. Fair market value of this book is $59. Very fine. 9.8 is $152. A 9.2 sold on the 22nd of December for $120. First solo Punisher series. That's a good cover.
Yeah, awesome. Like, again, you want to talk about covers that when you go to a booth at a Comic-Con that are going to kind of get you to stop, this one will every time. I love it.
This is one of those books for me. When I first got into comic books back then, this was one of those books on demand in which everybody wanted it.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Punisher at that time because he was dark, vigilante. This was the dark era of comics, as they like to call it. And Mike Zeck knew how to draw Punisher the way we wanted to see him.
For sure.
When he was part of Amazing, Spider-Man, that was fine. They kind of gave him this weird hairdo or something like that. It wasn't until Mike Zeck started doing him that he looked vicious.
He really locked it in.
Mm-hmm. This is the book that I love. This book. I also love the other one, the one that he's on the fire escape. That's a great cover as well. So I'm not hating on either or. But Punisher number 1 back in 1986. Captain America annual number 8, 1986 as well. Fair market value $25. 9.6 goes for $140. A 9.4 sold for $115 on the 22nd of December. It's when I think of Mike Zeck, this is what comes into my mind. This cover.
Yeah, amazing cover. What's not to like?
The lighting, the shield versus the claws, the angle. This
the
is
age-old question: what would happen if his claws hit that shield?
Mm-hmm. And we get the answer in this book.
Can we see that in a movie, please? Please, please.
I think there's a very strong possibility that will happen. Now, the possibility is definitely there.
Yeah.
But this is, again, a lot of people think of Punisher, and I agree with them with the Punisher cover. But I think this is the one that is his greatest cover of all. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I may be in the minority. I may not be.
It's got multiple characters. It's got the action. It's got the shield versus the claws. Mm-hmm. It's way up there for sure.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with this. And again, $25? Why not?
I got to ask at the comic shop on when I go on Thursday, and if they have it, I'm buying it.
But I've seen this as a T-shirt. I've seen different, color versions of it. The original is still the best use of color I've seen in the book.
Yeah, I love it. Love that one.
Now we're going to Rare Gems. Chuck Norris Karate Commandos number 1. This is for Star Comics. It also came out in 86. $8. There is a 9.6 for $97. Last recorded sale of this book was $8, and it was in December 9th. This is Chuck Norris' first comic book.
Who knew? I didn't. I did not know that.
And I can't pass up on Chuck Norris comic book. It is
No.
a Mike Zeck cover, as well as the first Chuck Norris comic book. $8.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. It's based off a cartoon of the same name. So Chuck Norris had a cartoon. That was the 80s for you. That we just had these crazy cartoons. Mr. T had a cartoon. Jackie Chan had a cartoon. Yeah, why not? Chuck Norris cartoon. I'm in for it. I'm down.
Who isn't a Chuck Norris fan?
If not, then Chuck Norris will get you.
He will. He'll find you.
Let's take a look at our next book. Daredevil 241. This is one of those books that I must have picked this book up at least 3 or 4 times. And it's back in 86. It's $4. It's 9.8 goes for $159. This book sold for $5 on the 21st. It's a cover by Mike Zeck, but more importantly than that, and we've been talking about Mike Zeck, inks by Todd McFarlane.
How does that even happen?
Well, he was doing the inks.
I know, but it's just amazing that the crossover of those two people. Oh man, dynamite.
Mm-hmm. And what's really nice about it is that you could see both of their styles in it. It's a good mashup between artist and inker. But this time, when the inker becomes one of the biggest artists of his generation, to the point that we were just talking about one of his books in the top trending. Yeah. And this is another book that he did inks for. So to do inks over Mike Zeck.
What a great book to pick up for $4.
Yeah, I must have picked this up so many times because I just love that cover. Such a good cover.
It's another one I'm going to have to look for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, our next book. Another classic cover. Captain America 332. $11, very fine. $131 at a 9.8. Last recorded sale of this book was $131 and 9.8. It's an iconic cover. And we talked about Todd McFarlane, but this one was inked by Klaus Janson.
Another huge name.
Mm-hmm. Another classic cover. This is beautiful. This is a poster.
Yeah.
And then to have Abraham Lincoln in the corner box is genius.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, let me just throw in Abraham Lincoln while I'm at it in the corner box. Just to show the importance.
Always be a market for these patriotic style U.S. flag with Captain America. They're just good covers.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to our next book. Web of Spider-Man 31. This is the start of Craven's Last Hunt. This book, part 1, is not given as much love as the other books, but it should deserve its place. It's also an amazing cover by Mike Zeck. This book is going for $19. Very fine. 9.8 goes for $128. Last recorded sale was $16 of this book. Most of Craven's Last Hunt is fairly reasonable pricing. I've picked up a few of them here and there at good prices. What who've read Craven's Last Hunt, tell me what your thoughts on Craven's Last Hunt.
So I was just actually flipping through, and you're right about this first issue. They get the story set, the tone set, and he's in the ground. Spider-Man's in the ground by the end of this first issue, which is amazing. And again, collecting ASM and then hearing about this, and whatever the first issue wasn't amazing, whatever part it was, I don't know if it's part 2 or part 3, but that was kind of the first time that there was a crossover where I had to go back and go, oh, wait, I have to go find these other issues. Again, genius by Marvel for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love this story. It's really good.
Yeah, the ASM obviously is the flagship, but Web was the secondary book at that time. So they decided, how could we get more people to buy Web? Well, let's do a cross promotional storyline where we could tell the whole story in a shorter time period but within the different books. And Mike Zeck did the work on all of them. I'm sure the original plan probably was to do it all at ASM, but give love to Webb, give love to the other books, and then we could get it done faster, because at this time, what a lot of people don't know is that this was running very close to some new artists coming into Amazing Spider-Man. You know, he was
Yes.
doing some work in Incredible Hulk, but
Yeah.
they already was talking about getting him in ASM, and that guy I'm talking about is Todd McFarlane. He was getting
Ironically related to Spider-Man, but I almost dropped Amazing Spider-Man with issue 297 because I just did not like it at the time. I didn't like the art. Thank goodness I didn't.
good decision, right?
Yeah.
Let's go with the next Kraven Last Hunt book, and that is 293. This is the iconic part 2. All right, this book comes out $24, 9.8, $95, which I think that is a steal
Yeah.
for that kind of price.
Amazing.
With this cover being so iconic, you know, and besides, a lot of these covers are iconic with Kraven's Last Hunt. This is part 2. This one is beautiful.
Oh, amazing. You're giving me ideas that I should try to collect them all in 9.8 now. That's what I'm starting to think.
This is the second part. Then we got the next one. It just keeps getting better, man. Part 4. This one is Web of Spider-Man 32. This one's going for $32. 9.6 are going for $123. $19 for a very fine sold this week.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you get I showed you quickly, but the collection that you can get, the various trades and all that, they have a really cool section at the back, if you're a Mike Zeck fan, where it's just the pencils. And it's really, really cool. So if you are a Mike Zeck fan, look for those collections, because it is a really cool edition at the back of them.
I've seen this image on posters. I've seen this image on T-shirts. This is iconic.
And so many homages to this as well.
And they're still doing it too. We talk about Todd being homaged a lot. This is one of those books that gets homaged a lot. Mm-hmm. Here's another one. This is important. This is Amazing Spider-Man 294. This is part 5 of the story. Another book that's $24. 9.8 goes for $290. And this last sold for $22 in near mint. This is the death of Kraven the Hunter. Now, what I will say about his death is that it is a death that lasted. Yes. And it was significant. When he died, and the way he died, had a lasting effect on Spider-Man.
Yeah, at the time for the comics, again, you just didn't see that in a comic book.
Mm-hmm. So, a book, you also feature, I believe his daughter is in this book as well. But what was really interesting, which shocked me a little bit, was that this wasn't the final part of the story.
Yeah.
The story continued in the next issue, which I thought was interesting when I realized it afterwards. But this is the death of Kraven the Hunter. Such an important story, especially in Spider-Man lore.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's go with another DC book. We're getting to the point that we're reaching the end of these books, but Batman 417 features a cover by Mike Zeck. This is a $15 book. It's very fine. 9.8 goes for $98. Last recorded sale was a 101, which was a little bit more than the fair market value. And this is the first appearance of KG Beast. Another great cover by Mike Zeck, and rare DC comic book for Mike Zeck. We've mostly seen him in Marvel, but he has done some work in DC.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the way he does Batman as well.
Mm-hmm. Look at the work. He managed to get him to like swing, and then you have a beautiful skyline behind him. Like, and then the lighting is just, even though I'm sure he doesn't do the lighting, but the color, like Mike Zeck has probably got some of the best colors doing his work.
Yeah, another standout cover for sure.
Mm-hmm. Another Mike Zeck classic is Deathstroke to Terminator #1. This came out in 1991. $3 for this book. $76 at 9.8, and the last recorded sale was $4. And it's Deathstroke's first solo, iconic Deathstroke Mike Zeck cover.
Yeah, if you're a Deathstroke fan, you should be trying to find this because it's still, still has the Terminator in his title, which didn't last real long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love calling him Deathstroke the Terminator. It's really good. And I think we've reached a final point here. G.I. Joe, Real American Hero 224. This is the Great Lakes Comic Con variant, limited to 3,000. Mike Zeck doing an homage to Secret Wars 8, utilizing snake eyes.
And it's rare that you see like that. It's a little bit more of a trend now, but where the main artist homages their own work. I always love that.
It's also worth noting that there's no recorded slabs of this book.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, with how popular Secret Wars 8 is, I'm surprised. And G.I. Joe, for that matter.
Yeah, this is not the only one of its kind. There's also a black and white edition. This one's even more rare. This was at 1,500 copies. And there is no recorded value. Wow. So it exists. Whoever has it hasn't really sold it.
Yeah.
So there's no recorded price tag for this. And it could obviously should be worth more than the color one. So be on the lookout for those. And there you have it, guys. Mike Zeck. What's your thoughts on this list that we just went over?
Oh, it's awesome. So many books. Like, it's so interesting to always see like which ones get picked. And I love it because I learn so much. Because when I look at my list, like my list is completely really different. Like there's a little bit of a crossover with the Secret Wars, but I just love it. I love seeing all those Captain America covers. They're really good. I got to find that Wolverine one.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more comic content. Check out these other videos for even more insight, and I'll see you at the next one. Excelsior.